But in the spring of 1966, Benny was just 32 years old on his second tour in Vietnam. He and his fellow Green Berets were at an isolated camp along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. A huge North Vietnamese force attacked, bombarding Benny and his comrades with mortars and white phosphorus. At a time it was nearly impossible to move without being wounded or killed. But Benny ran into enemy fire again and again to retrieve supplies and ammo, to carry the wounded to safety, to man the mortar pit, holding off wave after wave of enemy assaults. 3 times explosions blasted him out of that mortar pit, and 3 times he returned. I have to be honest, in a battle and daring escape that lasted 4 days, Benny performed so many acts of bravery, we actually don't have time to talk about all of them. Let me just mention 3. On the first day, Benny was helping load a wounded American onto a helicopter. A Vietnamese soldier jumped onto the helo trying to escape the battle and aimed his weapon directly at the wounded soldier ready to shoot. Benny stepped in, shielded his comrade, placing himself directly in the line of fire, helping to save his wounded comrade. At another point in the battle, Benny and a few other soldiers were trapped in the mortar pit, covered in shrapnel and smoking debris. Their only exit was blocked by enemy machine gun fire. So Benny thought fast. He dug a hole out of the pit and snuck out the other side. As another American escaped through that hole, he was shot in the leg. An enemy soldier charged him, hoping to capture a live POW, and Benny fired, taking out that enemy and pulling his fellow Americans safe. By the 3rd day of battle, Benny and a few others had managed to escape into the jungle. He had cuts and wounds all over his body, but he refused to be evacuated. When a rescue helicopter arrived, Benny insisted that others go instead. And so on the 3rd night, Benny, wounded and bleeding, found himself with his men up on that jungle hill, exhausted and surrounded, with the enemy closing in. And after all they had been through, as if it weren't enough, there was something more. You can't make this up. There in the jungle, they heard the growls of a tiger. It turns out that tiger might have been the best thing that happened to Benny during those days, because he says the North Vietnamese were more scared of that tiger than they were of us. So the enemy fled. Benny and his squad made their escape, and they were rescued finally the next morning. In Benny's life, we see the enduring service of our men and women in uniform. He went on to serve a 3rd tour in Vietnam, a total of more than 2 decades in uniform. After he retired, he earned his master's degree, actually not 1 but 2, opened up an accounting firm, taught adult education classes, became national commander of the Legion of Valor Veterans Organization. So he has earned his retirement, despite what he says. He's living outside Auburn. And yes, he is a fan of the Auburn Tigers, although I did a poll with the family, and there's some Crimson Tide fans here. So there's obviously some divisions. But Benny will tell you that he owes everything to the men he served with in Vietnam, especially the 5 who gave their lives in that battle. Every member of his unit was killed or wounded. Every single one was recognized for their service. Today we're joined by some of the men who served with Benny, including Major John Bradford, the soldier that Benny shielded in that helicopter, and Major Wayne Murray, the soldier Benny saved from being captured. And I'd ask them and all of our Vietnam veterans who are here today to please stand or raise your hand to be recognized.